You walk away from 28 victories and millions of dollars, the world never stops asking why. Carl Edwards built a career on backflips, clean racing, and a smile that made him one of the sport's most marketable stars. 28 Cup Series wins, 2 championship battles that ended one spot short of everything he wanted. A future that looked guaranteed for another decade. Then in January 2017, he called a press conference and walked away. No warning, no scandal, no explanation that made sense to anyone watching. At 46 years old, nearly a decade after the most mysterious retirement in NASCAR history, Edwards finally reveals the truth. The real reason he left. The pressure no one saw. The decision that shocked the world. Before we reveal why Carl Edwards walked away from NASCAR, we need to understand what he left behind. Because his departure was not from failure. It was from the peak of everything he had spent 2 decades building. Carl Edwards was born on August 15, 1979 in Colombia. We're limited, and talent had to scream. We're limited, and talent had to scream louder than geography. Edwards started racing late compared to most Cup drivers, working his way through local circuits while studying engineering at the University of Missouri. That education shaped how he approached everything. Calculated, methodical, always thinking 3 steps ahead. When he reached the Cup Series in 2004 with Roche Fenway Racing, he carried that analytical foundation into every decision. His first full season in 2005 delivered his first victory at Atlanta. Then, something happened that would define his public image forever. He climbed from the car and executed a backflip off the window net. The celebration was spontaneous, athletic, and completely unexpected from a sport built on tradition rather than gymnastics. Fans loved it immediately, sponsors noticed, and Carl Edwards became one of the most marketable drivers in NASCAR almost overnight. 28 Cup Series victories followed across 12 full seasons, 38 Xfinity wins, 66 total victories that proved his talent matched his personality. He won at every type of track. Short tracks like Bristol, where patience mattered more than speed. Super speedways like Talladega, where one wrong move meant disaster. Road courses where precision separated champions from competitors still learning which pedal did what. Edwards mastered all of it with a consistency that placed him among the elite drivers of his generation. Off the track, Edwards became the face of clean racing and positive representation. He gave articulate interviews. He engaged with fans authentically. He avoided controversy deliberately. Sponsors lined up to attach their brands to a driver who raced hard without creating headlines that damaged reputations. Major companies built campaigns around his image, knowing he would never embarrass them with behavior that required public apologies. But championships never came. 2 agonizing near misses that defined his career more than any victory ever could. In 2011, he tied Tony Stewart in points at the season finale at Homestead. Identical points, identical everything except the tiebreaker. Stewart had 5 wins to Edwards' 1 that season. The championship went to Stewart by the thinnest margin the sports rulebook allowed. Edwards finished second. Then 2016 arrived. His first season with Joe Gibbs Racing brought renewed championship hopes. He made the championship 4 and fought Jimmy Johnson for the title at Homestead. The race came down to the final restart. Edwards needed to finish ahead of Johnson to win everything. Johnson held his position. Edwards finished second. Again. For the second time in 6 years, Carl Edwards walked away from a championship race, knowing he had been 1 position away from validating everything. 2 months later, he walked away from all of it, and nobody understood why. Carl Edwards came closer to winning a championship than most drivers ever get. Twice he stood on the edge of everything he wanted, and twice he watched it disappear in ways that felt impossibly cruel. The 2011 season with Roush Fenway Racing built slowly toward the finale at Homestead. Edwards had won only one race that year compared to Tony Stewart's 5 victories, but consistency carried him to the championship battle with a mathematical chance that defied every prediction made at the season's start. The final race became a 2-driver showdown, Edwards versus Stewart. Winner takes everything. The race unfolded with tension that made every lap feel heavier than physics allowed. Edwards drove conservatively, protecting his car and his championship position. Stewart raced aggressively, knowing he needed track position to secure the points required. When the checkered flag fell, both drivers had finished with identical point totals. The championship came down to the tiebreaker. Nobody wanted to decide anything. Most wins. Stewart had 5. Edwards had 1. The title went to Stewart. Edwards climbed from his car knowing he had done everything right and still finished second. The loss was devastating but not career-ending. Edwards believed another opportunity would come. He spent the next 4 seasons with Roush, trying to build momentum that never fully materialized. Then, in 2015, he made a bold decision. He left Roush for Joe Gibbs Racing, one of the most successful organizations in modern NASCAR. The move was calculated. JGR had championship-winning equipment. Edwards had championship-level talent. The combination felt inevitable. His first season with Gibbs in 2015 was solid, but not spectacular. Then 2016 arrived and everything clicked. Edwards won 3 races and qualified for the championship 4 at Homestead. This time, the battle was against Jimmy Johnson, a 7-time champion racing for his 8th title. The pressure was immense. The stakes were absolute. Winner takes everything. Again, the final restart with 10 laps remaining became the defining moment of Edwards' career. He needed to pass Johnson and hold him off to win the championship. Edwards dove to the inside aggressively, challenging Johnson's line with a commitment that showed desperation masked as courage. The cars made contact. Edwards' Toyota got loose. He fought to save it. The car spun. He hit the wall. His championship hopes ended in smoke and damaged sheet metal while Johnson drove away to his 7th title. Edwards finished 34th in the race and 2nd in the championship. For the 2nd time in 6 years, he had been 1 position away from everything and walked away with nothing. He climbed from the wrecked car at Homestead knowing something fundamental had changed. The smile was gone. The backflip never came. He gave brief interviews and disappeared into the hauler while Johnson celebrated in victory lane. 2 months later, Carl Edwards called a press conference and retired from NASCAR. No warning. No gradual fade into reduced schedules. Just done. At 37 years old, in his athletic prime, with millions of dollars still available, he walked away, and he never explained why. On January 11th, 2017, Carl Edwards walked into a press conference at Joe Gibbs Racing headquarters and shocked the NASCAR world with 7 words nobody expected to hear. "I am no longer going to race." The room went silent. Reporters looked at each other confused. Team officials sat frozen. Edwards was 37 years old. He had just finished 2nd in the championship. He had a guaranteed contract worth over $20 million waiting for 2017. And he was walking away. The explanation he gave that day satisfied nobody. Edwards talked about wanting to spend time with family. He mentioned feeling physically and mentally ready to step away. He used words like peace and clarity that sounded scripted rather than genuine. Every reporter in that room knew something was missing from the story, but Edwards refused to elaborate. He took questions for less than 20 minutes, thanked Joe Gibbs Racing for understanding, and walked out of NASCAR forever. The theories began immediately. Some believed the 2016 Homestead crash had broken something inside him that victories could never fix. He had been aggressive on that final restart. The contact with Johnson. The spin into the wall. All of it broadcast nationally with millions watching him lose everything in real time. Maybe the embarrassment was too much. Maybe the pressure of coming so close twice and failing both times had created mental damage that time could not heal. Others suggested health concerns Edwards was hiding from the public. Concussions were becoming a serious topic in NASCAR. Maybe Edwards had suffered symptoms doctors told him were dangerous to ignore. Maybe the decision was medical rather than emotional, but Edwards never confirmed anything related to health. He simply disappeared. Financial theories emerged, suggesting Edwards had made enough money to retire comfortably and chose quality of life over continued risk. 28 victories, millions in career earnings, sponsorship deals that extended beyond racing. Maybe he had calculated that leaving at 37 with his health intact was smarter than chasing a championship that seemed cursed to always stay one position away. Some insiders whispered about tension with Joe Gibbs Racing, contract disputes, disagreements about team direction, personality conflicts that made continuing unbearable despite the money involved. But JGR leadership never confirmed friction existed. They praised Edwards publicly. They expressed shock at his decision. They offered nothing that suggested problems behind closed doors. The conspiracy theories reached further. Some fans believed Edwards knew something about the sport's future that others did not see yet. Changes coming to NASCAR that would make the sport less appealing. New rules, new ownership structures. Something fundamental shifting that made him want out before the decline became obvious. But Carl Edwards said nothing. He moved back to Columbia, Missouri. He lived quietly. He made occasional public appearances that gave no answers. He attended a handful of races as a spectator and smiled for cameras without ever explaining why he left. The mystery remained unsolved. Until now. At 46 years old, nearly a decade after walking away, Carl Edwards finally reveals the real reason. At 46 years old, Carl Edwards sits in his home in Columbia, Missouri, far from the noise of race weekends and the pressure that defined 2 decades of his life. When asked about the retirement that shocked the world, his answer is simpler and more painful than any theory ever suggested. I was tired of being the guy who almost won. The 2016 Homestead crash was not just a racing incident. It was the moment Edwards realized he had become defined by losing rather than winning. 28 victories across 12 seasons. 66 total wins across all series. Statistics that proved his talent. But 2 championship battles that ended one position short created a narrative he could never escape. Carl Edwards was the guy who came close. The driver who had everything except the one thing that mattered most. After the crash, Edwards went home and could not sleep. He replayed the final restart in his mind hundreds of times. The decision to go aggressive, the contact with Johnson, the spin into the wall. Every detail burned into his memory with a clarity that felt like punishment. He had given everything. He had risked everything. And he had lost everything. Again, the pressure to return in 2017 felt unbearable. Sponsors expected him to bounce back. Joe Gibbs Racing had invested millions in his championship run. Fans wanted to see him redeem the heartbreak with another opportunity. But Edwards knew something nobody else understood. He did not want another opportunity. He wanted the pressure to stop. I looked at myself in the mirror and asked what I was really chasing. Edwards reveals. Was I racing because I loved it? Or was I racing because stopping felt like admitting I had failed? And I realized I did not know the answer anymore. The decision to retire was not about fear of injury. It was not about money or family time or secret health issues. It was about recognizing that chasing a championship had stopped being a dream and started being an obligation that was destroying his mental health, one season at a time. Edwards walked away because continuing required becoming someone he did not want to be. Harder, more aggressive, willing to cross lines he had spent his career respecting. The 2016 Homestead crash showed him what desperation looked like. and he hated what he saw. "I won 28 cup races," Edwards says quietly. "I made millions of dollars. I got to do backflips in front of crowds that made me feel like a rock star. But I never won a championship, and somewhere along the way, that one missing trophy made me forget about the 28 I did win. Walking away was not giving up. It was choosing to remember what I accomplished instead of obsessing over what I did not." At 46, Carl Edwards has no regrets about leaving. He has regrets about the championships that slipped away, but he has peace, knowing he chose his mental health over a trophy that might have cost him everything else worth having. Carl Edwards walked away from millions, championships, and a future that seemed guaranteed. The real reason was not scandal or injury. It was choosing peace over pressure. At 46, he finally tells the truth. Sometimes the bravest decision is knowing when to stop. Subscribe for more untold racing stories.